Hello, everyone. Wanted to share a brief video on the career intervention proposal assignment. So I just wanted to go through the requirements for this assignment and kind of help you understand how to prepare for that assignment. So I'm going to share my screen here. Actually, before I do that, just be aware that there are two parts of the career intervention proposal. So there's the paper portion, a 4 to 6 page paper, and then there's also a PowerPoint presentation that is going to be for your discussion board for week 14. So that'll be next week. So that is going to be due on the 27th. So the Wednesday, 27th of April. So that's where you'll be submitting, instead of a discussion board, you're submitting a PowerPoint on your career intervention proposal. Just some brief thoughts on the PowerPoint presentation. You don't need to go overboard. You don't need to be like writing tons, like paragraphs, tons of information in there. The main thing is we're going to go over the requirements for the career intervention proposal paper. So you just kind of need to be highlighting some of those section areas. Well, highlight all of them, but you don't need to go into tons and tons of details. So you can just kind of maybe even bullet point. I would use like at least enough of a sentence or something to be able to at least make sense, not just putting one word that's kind of vague and we don't understand what it means. So just kind of finding that middle ground of like, hey, you don't need to put tons and tons of detail, but you also like one word that doesn't give any direction of what you actually mean is obviously isn't sufficient either. So kind of that middle ground of like, okay, here's a bullet point of the approach that I'm using. So you might say utilizing the career construction interview, and then talk about asking the questions from the 5 different areas from Civicus and go into each one of those briefly. So that could be one idea of like an intervention. And then you can talk about, the population that you're going to be working with. If you want to work with teens in a school setting in a group format, you could kind of name that as well. So once again, this is a kind of a brief intro. So if you have specific questions, please reach out to me. I'd be happy to kind of talk you through the paper as well as the presentation. All right, so now I'm going to share my screen. Let's jump here. All right, so this is just in Blackboard on the assignments tab. So if you go to assignments, it'll bring you here, and then the career intervention proposal. So yeah, this is 25 points possible. So the paper is due on May 7th. The PowerPoint is on that, April 27th, so the week prior. All right, so let's go through some of these details really quick. So as it says here, you'll choose a population to plan a career intervention. You'll plan a career intervention utilizing a career theory of your choice and geared towards the developmental stage of the population you choose. And integrating 6 peer-reviewed papers or articles into your presentation. That can be in this area, which I'll talk about in a second, like the research supporting your intervention plan. It could also be as, talking about your career theory. I'm not specifying where exactly those 6 peer-reviewed articles need to be placed. It could be really anywhere in here. But I think it makes sense that at least some of those are here since you're talking about the research supporting your intervention plan. Let's see here, 4 to 6 page proposal, and then the PowerPoint, like I discussed, that will be in your discussion board. So each of these really quick, a short description of your client population. And this is where overall for this assignment, I encourage you to think about who do I really, if I could just choose the ideal group that I want to work with, who might that be? Obviously, we need to be able to work with lots of different groups and lots of different populations, but maybe it's like you're going to be a school counselor and you want to work with teens, maybe teens who have been experienced bullying or like whatever it is. Teens, maybe going from last week's articles, maybe females with disabilities, in the school system, whatever it could be. So just be thinking about, what do I care about? Who do I really want to work with? What do I feel passionate about? And so you can kind of apply that to this article. And it says the developmental needs of the client population are discussed. I'm pretty loose in what I mean here by developmental. It could just be, you could use a specific developmental model if you want for that specific population. Or it could even just be, where would this population be at in their growth? What are the next steps towards their growth? You know, kind of where is their, what is their, I guess, what are the milestones that they're going to be working on? So that doesn't have to be tons of depth. It's just kind of sharing a little bit more depth of like who is this group population? What are the things that are kind of maybe on the horizons for them? What are the current challenges that they're facing? Yeah, so just some ideas there. Then approximate page lengths here. So obviously with this being just about a half page for this portion, that doesn't have to be significant detail, just kind of some of the basic information about this group. Okay, then a brief description of the specific career theory that clearly informs the lesson plan / intervention. So this is where you're going to choose a theory, similar to like what we've been doing with our previous papers, but choosing a theory to kind of make sense of this intervention. So this can be a bit of summary. So you just kind of, I know I've been kind of harping on, you know, application, but here I'm asking you at least in that half page to say, okay, here's the specific theory. Like maybe I'm using social cognitive career theory. Here, you know, self-efficacy beliefs are important, outcome expectations, goals, you know, contextual influences, factors are important in this approach. So that'll kind of set the stage for you to then talk about your lesson plan / intervention plan. So this kind of sounds like, if we're going to like MBTI language, this might sound like a very judging type, you know, I need plans and have specifics and have all the like the intervention plan, you know, planned out specifically what I'm going to do at each minute. And, you know, if you want that, if the lesson plan feels right, that you want to like be very precise and specific for every step, like what you're going to say, where you're going to address things, you can do that. You can also be much more on the perceiver side of saying, okay, maybe it's like the Block and Richmond spiritual approach. Here are the, you know, the 7 themes. Like we'll talk about calling, but you don't have to exactly say, here's exactly what we'll talk about, because it, you know, that approach, it more unfolds. But you can say, you know, you can maybe hypothesize a little bit, you know, based on, you know, this approach, we may discuss calling and how it, you know, impacts their sense of flow and direction, and it's kind of being drawn, and, you know, integrating with their spirituality. So you can kind of extend that a little bit. So once again, I think it might be a good point at this here to, I wanted to bring up Bloom's taxonomy again really quick. So this is kind of like, once again, I've showed this in a previous video, but if you haven't seen it yet, I want to go over it really quick. So this kind of has to do with higher levels of learning. So the most basic level of learning is just remembering facts. You know, so for this class, it'd just be like remembering the elements of Block and Richmond's approach, remembering that there are 7 themes. But then understanding it is like, okay, but I can not just remember these things and just kind of maybe spout them back out, but it's like, I understand what they are. I can explain it in my own words, but then, oh, I can apply it. That's what we've been doing in our past 2 papers, applying it to ourselves and applying it to a volunteer. So that's even more, you know, depth of information, of kind of depth of learning and insight. But really for this assignment, I'm asking you to go into the analysis, the evaluation, but also to creating, you know, so this is like the highest level of learning, is to create an intervention plan. You know, so it might feel like, wait, what exactly do I need to do? What are the, like, I'm asking you to like create, kind of innovate a new idea, a new approach. Obviously that still integrates theory and still integrates like some interventions that are in different approaches, but applying it to a specific, you know, population. So this might kind of feel a little loose at the start, but then you kind of need to provide the structure of like, okay, based, like you're synthesizing all of what you've learned from this class, what has really resonated with you and stood out to you, what interventions have really stood out, what theories have connected, and then how do I want to apply this? How might I apply this as a counselor? So back to here, so that can kind of help you with your lesson plan. You can create the lesson plan. Maybe the lesson plan is for, you know, if you're in a school counseling track, it could be working with a group of students. Maybe it's a small group that you're working with of students. If you're in the mental health track, it could just be a one-on-one session. You know, it could be a lot of different things. It could be even like teaching a career counseling course at a university setting, or doing a presentation for a group of students on career development, whatever you want it to be. So then you'd have to talk about, you know, the materials needed, the space needed. For certain interventions, the materials might be a longer list, because you might be doing activities and experiences. For just a one-on-one counseling, it might be like, we need the chairs, we need our counseling office, and we're talking about things. It's more qualitative, which is fine as well. So yeah, then so after you kind of describe, here's the theory, here's, you know, that this theory connects to the lesson plan, and you can kind of make the bridge here of like, okay, here's the summary of the theory, and here's how it then applies to this specific population. And then you talk about the lesson plan. But then, what is research saying about how this intervention plan could be beneficial? Depending on how you do this, there might not be a lot of research, but you can kind of maybe, if you're doing the spiritual approach, once again, there hasn't been a ton of research there. So whatever you can find, even if it's like theoretical articles where it's not like they didn't do a specific study, but they're just kind of talking about spirituality and career counseling, like that's okay too. As long as that's a peer-reviewed article, it's good to go. Then lastly, you can talk about how do you plan to evaluate the intervention's effectiveness? So that could be just asking the client. It could be, sending out like a survey. It could be something formal like feedback informed treatment, for having them fill out the session rating scale and the outcome rating scale. Like there's specific things of kind of how to assess. So just do a little bit of research on how might you evaluate the intervention's effectiveness. How do you know that you're actually doing what you hope to do, that you're actually helping how you hope to help, is kind of the main gist there. Okay. If there are questions, which there probably are, I'm happy to, meet one-on-one via Zoom, answer emails about the specific situation. Some students have already started to reach out to me about this. And if it's kind of loose and you're not sure how to get traction, I bet with us talking, you'll find that pretty quick and be able to move forward. So I was talking in pretty kind of general terms here, but if we get into the specifics of years, I think we can really find a lot of traction if you're kind of feeling that you need that. The rubric, once again, 25 points. I'd encourage you to look over this APA writing style. This kind of talks about the background that is shared for the career intervention, for the client group. This goes over that you provide a thoughtful intervention plan. You have that research support section, and how you'll assess, and the different point ranges. So be sure to look over that. Let me know if you have any questions. Okay. I actually just realized you may not have been able to see when I pulled up the rubric, but it is right there that it talks about the 3 different main areas of how I go about grading this assignment. So please check that out. Okay, if you have any questions, don't hesitate to reach out. I look forward to another week. We're almost there, almost the end of the semester. Thanks.